you hear me? Can you hear me like this? Could you hear me like this? Okay, that's the choice. Up here or...
Really close.
Okay. That's better.
Up to your chin.
Welcome everybody. Welcome. Thank you all for coming. I'm speechless for so many reasons, but usually because I sit on the other side of the pizza, and that one right here on the bima is like, wow. Okay, so we came here to hear my daughter Dina share a bit of her life with us and bare her soul. I had sent the link to watch Shine a Little Light, so you get to see a little bit of what she's going through and the simcha of what she's going through. So how many of you saw it? Is there anyone who didn't see it? Okay, so when you get the opportunity, it's called Google Shine a Little Light. It used to be it didn't show up right away, there were some others, but right away now you Google Shine a Little Light, it shows right up for Yitzi. And if you watch the whole video, it's just amazing, and the next video tells you how the video was started, and it's just awesome. But if you want to know how Dina copes, and how her family copes, and how everybody's besimcha, we're going to have to hear from her directly. So Dina lives in California, and she is here on the occasion of her daughter's bat mitzvah. I know my daughter Dina came to Israel for the first time for her bat mitzvah, and she stayed with my mom, who went antiquing every day and took her along to all the stores to buy antiques. And Dina says, no, she's not doing that. So she came here to share the experience with her daughter, and I convinced her one night, please speak one night. So she agreed, and without further ado, my daughter Dina Hurwitz.
Play around with it until we find a position that works. That's better? Okay.
Check in the back.
Can you see me? Hold on a second while I find what I'm going to talk about.
Step up, it's a whole new view.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my family before all of this happened. When I was 14, I went to learn in Crown Heights for a year, 9th grade, and I stayed at my cousin's house. And my cousin had this best friend, Dina Hurwitz. And I had never met anybody with so much joy and excitement to life. And I told my mother that I'm going to marry him. I didn't tell him anything, I just turned red and walked out every time he walked in the room. But he had something about him that was so incredible to me, so much energy and so much joy. And he's the first person I dated, my only person I dated. We got married when I was 21, and we're now married for 20 years. We moved, my husband and I are Hasidim of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and it was my husband's dream his whole life to be the Rebbe's soldier, and to go wherever that takes him, and to teach Torah to people who don't know it, and to show people the beauty of Yiddishkeit when they can't see it. So this brought us to a little small town in California called Temecula. Temecula had a population of 40,000 when we moved there. The mayor liked to tell me that I was personally responsible for the population growth. We have 7 kids, Kinahara, and although other people, there's 120,000 there now, so it's not all me. So Temecula is a really nice place, but it's far away from anything Jewish. The closest Jewish community was in San Diego, and that's where we would bring our kids to school. So I had to look up what kilometers are over here to see how far it was. In order to bring my kids to school and back, I drove 1,609 kilometers a week. So I spent a lot of the early years driving. And the kids had a good Jewish school. It's a small community, money was really tight. My husband worked 3 jobs in order for us to make a living. he worked his favorite job. He was a shliach of the Rebbe, and we had a little Chabad house. He also worked as a Jewish chaplain in a mental facility for the criminally insane, which was good, because then we all looked very normal. And he did a hashgacha job at a farm in order to get Chalav Yisrael where we are, and many weeks he spent 4 nights sleeping in his car at the farm in order to help our family, our growing family with a small community that is a little hard to support. I'm not sure if you know, in America, chinuch is very expensive. It costs about $70,000 to get a Jewish education for a family of our size. So all of this kept him very, very busy. And my husband is very talented. He is a musician, he plays guitar, he sings beautifully, he tells stories, he dances. He can find anybody in the world and have a conversation with them. And every one of these talents he used in the service of Hashem. And about 4 years ago, he told me that there's something is not working in my mouth. And I thought he was tired because most people have to sleep, and he wasn't sleeping. So at first, he took off a little bit of one of the night job, and it seemed to get better, and then it came back, and we started going to doctors, and many doctors, and it took 6 months to get a diagnosis. My husband was diagnosed with something called bulbar onset ALS. ALS is a neuromuscular disease where the brain doesn't communicate with the muscles anymore, and the muscles stop working and slowly die. As of now, there's no cure for ALS. The kind that my husband has is the most aggressive form. The doctors tell us you have 2 years from when you first know the symptoms. That's the life expectancy. So here, our whole life turned over. He was the outgoing one. He was the one with the energy. He was Superman in our family. There was nothing that he couldn't and wouldn't do. And it started with his speech. And most rabbis need to speak. So we started looking for a new rabbi to take over where we were in Temecula. And there's been a lot of changes that we've gone through since then. But I want to share with you a little story that happened when we told our children about this diagnosis. Our children at that time were 6 through 16. Now, 4 years later, 10 through 19. And we divided them into the older kids and into the younger kids. And the younger kids, we were very brief and open about what's going on, but they really didn't understand. And the older kids, we really had to tell them the honest truth about it, because there's something called Google out there. And I asked them to do just a few things. First of all, don't Google it. The information online is not necessarily accurate, and they don't know your father and his emunah in Hashem, and they don't know that Jewish people are above nature. I also told them that they cannot use this as an excuse to ruin their lives. If they want to be sad, that's fine. If they're angry, that's fine. If they're scared, that's fine. But they can't use this as a way to check out of life. And we don't have to figure out how to get through the rest of the life right now. We have to figure out how to get through this moment, and then the next one, and then the next one. The next morning, my 2 boys were 11 and 12 at the time, are sitting at the table, and for me, I had been working up to this nightmare of, telling my kids what's going on and really ending their childhood. And now I had to go back to regular life. It's time to take the kids to school. And I was really kind of falling apart in the morning. And my son says to me, he says, "Mom, you just have to do this moment." And it's always interesting to know if our kids are listening or not. And the lessons that we teach our kids, I think, are very important. And knowing that they hear them is really reassuring. Over the next year and a half, my husband lost his ability to do just about everything. So everything that started in the mouth went first. His ability to speak, his ability to eat, his ability to daven, to kiss the kids, and that led to him having to have a feeding tube put in so that he can eat and have nourishment that way. His body seemed to work for, his left side was getting weaker, but he looked well and healthy. He just couldn't speak. And my husband has always approached this with some sort of joy that he has. And he had his iPhone that he would use to communicate. And there's a button on your iPhone where you can write a message and then press speak and it talks. I don't know what they have on other phones, but you don't have every accent available. So his was a British accent. And it said, in case you get pulled over by a cop for speeding or something like this, you need to know this stuff. "Hi, my name is Dina Hurwitz. I was diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease and I cannot speak and I don't have this accent." That was his message. And shortly afterwards, his body as well stopped working, slowly. Every month there was another loss and another adjustment, how to deal with this loss, and more guilt. How come I didn't appreciate last month before we had this loss? And we moved to Los Angeles. Los Angeles is 100 miles away from Temecula, and it's a very large Jewish community where there's a lot better resources for our family. And there's a school next door, so I don't have to drive 1,000-something kilometers every week. And it was a lot of changes. It was, I don't know how many of you are around or above 40, but you kind of think at that point that you know what Hashem wants from you. And then all of a sudden, you're, in a cannonball shot as far from what you're used to as possible. We're living in a new community where I don't know anybody. And the kids are in new schools, and I don't even know the parking laws. I keep getting parking tickets over there. And there was a whole lot of changes. And it was Hashgacha Pratis that we moved next door to a yeshiva. So I grew up in a small town. I like small towns. I like my front yard and my backyard and a lot of space between me and my neighbor. And here we are in an apartment building that when I open my bedroom window shades, my son in yeshiva says, "Good morning, Mommy." And this is just too close. This is insane. This has been the biggest blessing to us. The day after Rosh Hashanah, it's going to be 2 years this year, my husband was rushed to the hospital with pneumonia and ended up having a tracheotomy, which means that they put a hole in his throat and they connected him to a ventilator that breathes for him. The number one cause of death of people with ALS is that they can't breathe. And now that they have better technology out there, the life expectancy is longer. Before he had the trach, he can use his right hand, which meant that he could communicate with his phone, and also he could drive his wheelchair, which to him meant he could be mobile. If he's uncomfortable, he can adjust himself. If he wants to go to a different room and see what the kids are doing, he can do that. But all of a sudden, in the hospital, he lost the use of his hand, and he was stuck with no way to communicate. At this point, we were introduced to a wonderful computer. It's called a Toby, which of course, the technology is from Israel. And this computer sees the reflection in his eyes, and he can write with this computer. He can go online, he can download Sfarim, he can email people, he can write a Dvar Torah, which he does every week and puts out, and he can communicate to the people around him. But it took a long time to get used to this. He was just coming out of a surgery, and this is a pretty traumatic surgery. Most of us, when we're scared, we use our breath to control that and to slow us down. And here he has a machine doing it he can't control it at all. And it was a very, very, very difficult time for us. My husband and I, we are best friends. When we first got engaged, I didn't think there was anybody in the world who experienced the kind of love I have for him, because the world would just be a much better place if everybody had that. And then I said to myself, Dina, you're just 21, you don't know everything. And I thought maybe everybody does experience that. And seeing our life now, we have a very special connection. And this has been life-saving for the two of us. In the days after his trach, his body went into shock, and it was Sukkot as he came home from the hospital. And I sat with him, reading him stories of miracles, throwing the books of miracles because they're not happening to us. And it took a long time to adjust to this. As soon as we had, this also meant that I moved out of the bedroom, and we have now a nurse in our house 24 hours a day. So everything really did change. It's important to have a nurse, because I can't do it all myself, but it also is different to have somebody in your house all the time. When my husband and I want to have a private conversation, we text each other. It's a very long conversation. It takes him a long time to send messages. So he has certain messages saved on his computer. So every morning when I come into his room, he pulls up, "Good morning, Dina, my love. I'm sorry you're tired," because who's not tired? "I love you and I appreciate you, and you are wonderful beyond words." The other thing he always sends me is usually by text that I fetch very nicely. I also believe in using our God-given talents to the best of our capabilities, and that's my God-given talent. After things settled down a little bit after his trach, I went on a women's Shabbaton. First time I left the house in months with Sheina. And there were two wonderful women there who sat with me for many hours. And they said to me, "Dina, I don't know if you know the difference between pain and suffering. Pain is something that everybody has. We're in gullus, and nobody escapes it. Suffering is when there's no purpose to your pain. And that's your choice." So for my husband, this has never been an issue. My husband, like I said, always wanted to be the Rebbe's soldier, and that didn't change for him. He can still do that now. As a matter of fact, he does it on a much more global level than in our little hick town of Temecula. And this hasn't been an issue for him. For me, I'm stuck being a parent, a mother and father to our children who thankfully are growing up, which means that they're mostly teenagers right now, and being the nurse whenever necessary and trying to figure out how to do finances in the house. I have no idea. And it was very hard for me to find any kind of purpose to what we're going through. I started to write. The first thing I wrote was a story that happened to me in the Yam HaMelech when I was here 13 years ago for my sister's wedding. I went to the Yam HaMelech. I have psoriasis, so this is what they do here. And I came a few weeks before my sister's wedding, and I went there for 2 weeks. And the first time I go into the water, I'm like waiting for a miracle to happen, right? This is special water, and I'm just walking and nothing happens. You just walk in, just like any other water. And all of a sudden, I lose my balance, and I fall. And that's when I see the miracle. That's when you realize that you're floating. All of us have this illusion in our life that we have it all under control. That whatever successes we have are because of us. And only when you fall do you see how much Hashem is involved in your life. In our family, it took the form of hundreds of people getting together to support our family. My husband was the one who made the money in our family. And they created this organization, and they said to me, Dina, this is our promise to you for life. You worry about the kids. We'll worry about everything else. This is how lucky we are to be Jewish people, to be part of a community. As I watched my husband's talents disappear, his abilities disappear, this thought came to me, who are we? How do you measure who you are? Like, what makes you you? And most of us, we identify with our job, or our talents, our hobbies, our families. And I watched every single one of those things be stripped away from my husband, and nothing changed about him. He's still exactly who he was. Maybe more focused because he doesn't have to work 3 jobs now. But we are all part of Hashem. We all have inside of us a neshama that comes into the world in order to make this world holy. And no matter what talents you have or don't have, that does not change. And that's really who we are. I heard this story told to a group of college kids in public school in America. This man got up with a beautiful $100 bill and asked everybody if this has value. And they said, of course. Then he crumpled it up and said, does it have less value now? And they said, no. Then he put it on the floor and stepped on it. Did the value change? And they said no. Then he put it in the mud and it still had the same value. We are human beings inherently valuable. The things that we go through in our lives are sometimes being put through the mud and being stepped on and being tossed around, and it does not change your value as a human being. It doesn't change how God views you, and it shouldn't change how you view yourself. Now that's a hard one, because the difficulties really do affect us deeply. But you are more than your troubles. You're more than your actions. You're more than your opinions. You are something that matters in this world. Us being alive is saying that we matter in this world. I recently read something, this woman talk about this, who is wealthy, one who is satisfied with their lot. And she translated it to be that all of us are given a lot in life. We're given a personality, we're given our bodies, ourselves. And one who is satisfied with who you are as an individual is a happy person. And I'm sure that we've all come across people that just seem content with who they are. And this is what it means to be wealthy. To be content with who you are in the knowledge that you were put here with a special mission to do. One of the things that I see as the most important lesson that we have learned is communication. The way we communicate now is very different. My husband has a computer, and it takes him a long time to say anything. You can imagine an argument between the two of us. And the computer doesn't talk with emotion, so that's always fun. Communication has a lot to do with looking at each other and really, really talking to each other from the heart. We're living in a society where it's hard to communicate. First of all, we have all these really cool devices that allows us to be in touch with people without really knowing how they're doing. Because unless you could see it on their face, how could you know really how they're doing? Anybody could put up, the one happy moment they had that day on Facebook or in their WhatsApp groups, and you think, wow, they're doing great. And it's a really big challenge that we have to communicate for real, to have real conversations. I see sometimes people don't even like to make eye contact because, you're going to know what's really going on if you look at me in the eyes. And maybe I'm not okay today. And I don't want the whole world to know that. But we're missing something so vital. The only thing that we can do to help each other in this world is to be there for each other. Your pain is your pain. Hashem gave you challenges. And most people cannot do anything about somebody else's challenges. Most of us can only be there for each other so that we don't go through it alone. And to recognize that what we call communication now is hurting us. There are people that are so lonely with all their devices because it's not a substitute for real people and for real conversations. Shabbos is a little harder for us. We don't use the computer. Of course, the Rav said he could use the computer, but he doesn't want to. So we have this ABC chart, and it takes a while. And what I find interesting is we get used to doing something, and when it becomes harder, it becomes really tedious. So when you want to have a conversation and you have to stand there holding this thing up for 5 minutes to figure out what he's trying to say, it's exhausting. And my attention span is only 6 letters. So if the word has more than 6 letters, we're in big trouble. Shabbos I sit and read to him most of the time. And it's very different. What I have found is that I spend more time with him. We spend more time talking than most married couples do. Nobody knows what tomorrow is going to bring. Nobody knows what challenges you're going to face. Everybody knows somebody who is taken so suddenly. We have a gift. We have the knowledge that time is precious. And sometimes when you come and listen to somebody like me, you can remember that as well, that your time is precious. And you use that time to the best of your ability. Now, I can't say that this happens all the time, but most of the time. When I said that we are so lucky that we moved next door to a yeshiva, I want to describe that for a minute. Let me tell you how my husband lives his days now. He's paralyzed from head to toe. He can move his eyes, and he can smile, almost head to toe. The only way he communicates is through the 2 ways I told you, that the ABC chart and his computer. All his food and medicine he gets through his feeding tube. And he has about 100 visitors a week. We have a Torah in his room. And every time there's Kriyas Torah, there's a minyan in his room. The 11th grade in the yeshiva next door has a Gemara shir in his room every day. And just so that you know, these kids have problems in their lives. And kids get overwhelmed by their problems. And they come in and they see somebody with maybe a little bit more problems than them, who's not overwhelmed, who's just happy. And it's really interesting how the kids start out the year afraid to make eye contact, and by the end of the year, they're giving him hugs and kisses goodbye. He has chavrusos that with the teachers and with the other students one-on-one. He learns about until 2:30 every day. He has a lot of Sfarm downloaded on his computer, so he can learn that way, because otherwise he cannot hold a sefer and he can't turn the pages. And he happens to have a very beautiful life. It's not an easy life, but it's a beautiful life. And one day I walk into his room and he's laughing. And I asked him, what's so funny? What are you laughing at? And he says, and when I say he says, this took 10 minutes. He says that we always learn about emunah and bitachon. And we never know how are we really going to act if we're tested. He says, and I know, and that makes me happy. Now, all of us are created the same way. We all have the same mothers and fathers. And when the Torah teaches us about different qualities that they had, it's not just a nice story. It's telling you what you have, because this is your DNA. This is what you're made of. When Miriam Hanaviah made a tambourine, she walked around with it every day, because she knew that very soon we're going to be taken out of Egypt. Does anyone know how many years she walked around with it? 80 years. 80 years. Every day we wake up and we know that today could be the day that Mashiach comes. And at the end of the day, maybe we're a little sad that he hasn't come, but tomorrow we wake up with the same thought. It's like a woman expecting a baby, and on her due date, the baby doesn't come. She doesn't just say, oh, it's not coming. It's gonna come. It might be the next day or the next week, but it's gonna come. And as Jewish people, we live with this belief for thousands of years. This is one of the principles, the foundations of our belief, is that Mashiach can come any day. All diseases that have ever come into the world, the ones that have been found to have a cure, at some point there was no cure. And then one day there was a cure. And this is the same for all of our troubles that we have, all of our problems. You never know what that day is going to bring you. You never know what each day is possible. And a lot of doctors that we have, they're not so comfortable with that. My husband's doctor, he's been doing this for many years. He's in his 70s, and every patient he's ever had died. And it's very hard for him. I mean, imagine you go into a field and you think you're going to make a difference. But he knows one day there's going to be a cure. He doesn't feel strongly that it could reverse damage, but one day they found a cure to cancer. One day they found shots to prevent diseases. So as Jewish people, we are maminim b'nei maminim. We believe that we're above nature and Hashem can do anything when he wants. This is actually one of my big problems. A lot of people come over to me and say, Yeshua's Hashem keharifayim. And I said to them, that's not my problem. My problem is I know that. I just don't know why. It hasn't been yet, right? As frum people, we have different challenges. You know that Hashem can change anything at any moment, just why hasn't he yet? My husband writes a Devar Torah, like I said. If any of you have email, you could sign up for it. It's not lengthy, because it's really to the point, and he has a very unique perspective coming from his life. And the week that we read about the rebukes, my husband wrote this Devar Torah on the blessings we find in the curses. This really irritated me. Curses are curses, blessings are blessings. Let's not mix the two of them up. And I started to think about, what the world would be like if everybody had what they needed. Think about it for a minute. If everybody had the knowledge they need, the health they need, the parnasa they need, shidduchim they need, the children they need, who would you guys know? Who would you know if you never had to help somebody? If nobody ever had a problem that needed somebody else's help? We have committees to help with the schools. We have, when somebody has a baby, we bring them meals. People visit sick people in the hospital. So many people that we've met because somebody has a problem and we're going to try to see what we can do about it, or we have a problem and other people want to see what they can do about it. We are put into the world to make these connections. We're put in the world to help each other with our pain. The one thing that can help somebody with their pain, there's two things actually, is your perspective and not going through it alone. Over the years, we have met some very interesting people, and many of them have shared their stories with us. And these stories are so important to us. They give us faith when we're at the end of our rope. I'm going to share with you a story, but my point is not the story. My point is really that all of you have a story that one of your friends needs to hear. Because you've all gone through something, a lot of things, and you have it within you to help a friend with what they're going through based on the knowledge that you have what helped you with what you were going through. And without sharing our stories, no matter how painful it is, you're not helping anybody. When we still lived in Temecula, my husband was barely able to speak. It was Hoshana Rabbah, and he comes home from Shul, and he tells me that there's a Frum family here in town visiting from Manhattan, and maybe they're going to come eat with us. And I thought that's really weird, because we really live in the middle of nowhere, and if a Frum family is coming, they call before to find out where's the Shul, where's the sukkah, where's kosher food, and we didn't hear anything from them. So this couple walks in. I mean, she looks like a ballerina. She is like little, petite, beautiful. Wow. That's nice. And they're in town for his college roommate's wedding, which is not walking distance from the shul, so they're staying at a hotel that they could walk to the wedding on Yom Tov. And she shares with us this unbelievable story. When they were newlywed, they went on a honeymoon, and they went bungee jumping. Anybody here try that? I'm not trying that. She was in a terrible accident, and she crashed into a bunch of rocks, and she was knocked unconscious, and every bone in her body was broken. And he had her airlifted back to Manhattan, where they did a bunch of tests on her, and the doctor told this newlywed husband, you need to prepare for the worst. This is really bad. And he sat by her side for months. And eventually he noticed that her fingers and toes start moving. And the doctor says, I don't want you to get your hopes up, it's probably just reflexes. And he sat with her for longer, and she woke up. And they put her through many tests, and it seems like her body's really healing. And they did as much physical therapy as they can do in the hospital, and then it was time to take her home in a wheelchair. And the doctor said to her, that you're never going to walk again, and you're never going to have children. And she says to me, I walked into your house pregnant with my second child to tell you that there's only one healer, and that's Hashem. This story has brought me so much, even more light, so much comfort in so many times, but I'm so glad that she shared her story with me, because she could have not. You know, we all have something so valuable, and it doesn't help anybody if we don't share it. Throughout this experience, and throughout, you know, everybody's experiences in life, we go through cycles. There's times where we're like on the top of the wheel and we think, oh, I'm doing really well. Good for me. Things are, you know, I have it together today. And there's times where you're way at the bottom and you wonder if you're ever going to dig yourself out of that hole. Most of our life is spent in the middle. Most of us here are women. I don't know how many men are here. But one thing I think women are really looking for is honesty. We're looking for something to explain to ourselves in an honest way what we're going through. When you're at the bottom of that wheel and you're feeling terrified, you have to ask yourself, do I have a reason to be terrified? And if you're feeling angry, ask yourself, do I have a reason to be angry? And if you're sad, do you have a reason to be sad? I mean, I know I have reasons for this. I'm sure most of us do. And allow yourself to be honest with your emotions. Again, back to our society of social media, it's not really popular to have bad days, but everybody has them. And what I have found is if you allow that, it helps you come out of it faster. If the worst thing you could possibly do is be going through something terrible, and on top of what you're going through, be mean to yourself. As friends of people going through hard times, many of us just want to reach in there and grab them out of that pit that they're in. And I want to caution you about that, because when you go home, they fall right back into the pit. Whenever I'm at my lowest point, I'm terrified. If it lasts, you know, more than it did last time, it's even more terrifying. But what I have found is that when I'm there, each time I learn a new skill. And that new skill takes me to a higher place than I was at my last cycle on top. Hashem has put us all on a journey. We don't really have so many choices, but we have the ability to learn things. To learn things and to get tools to help ourselves, to help our families, and to help each other along this way. And it would be such a shame to waste that. A little disclaimer, I don't think that goes for somebody who is having like a severe depression where you actually need outside help. But most of us go through these cycles quite often. And take the time to be kind to yourself. The biggest mitzvah that we have in the Torah, we're coming up now, we're in the 3 weeks, right before the 9 days. This is what's supposed to be our focus right now, is v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. And the big secret, big brother of that mitzvah is how to love yourself. That's not so often spoken about. And for women, we're used to nurturing everybody else, and not everybody takes the time to take care of themselves. Sometimes we could be actually really, really hard on ourselves. And it's important that we show the same compassion to ourselves that we show to our friends. It's important that we're kind to ourselves. All of us have very complicated lives. This is not an easy time to live in. Maybe it's easier than other times in some ways, but in many ways it's very, very hard. It's complex, it's difficult. What's good and bad is questionable, and it's not so clear as it should be. And you need to be honest with yourself and know that inside of you beats the heart of a mother of Israel, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. And you have it in you, but you just have to believe in yourself. You have to show kindness to yourself. Many of us are living every day as if we're in a storm. You don't have blizzards here. What's the equivalent of a sandstorm? I don't know. I don't have blizzards where I am either, but earthquakes still last so long. When you're going through a storm, you do whatever it takes to survive. You're not expecting to thrive at that point. Your house is not going to be as neat as it should, as you want it to be. Your ideal for what you hoped your life will be is not fair to ask of yourself when you're holding on for dear life. It's so important in order to be able to give to our families and the people around us, our friends, that you recognize that in yourself. When you're going through a hard time, be kind to yourself. There's a very special young woman who passed away a couple months ago, and she said this was her favorite saying. She didn't make it up. I'm sure you all know it. In the end, it's going to be good. And if it's not good, it's not the end. We have a lot of faith as Jewish women. Even in the Torah, we see that the women are at a higher spiritual level. They have a higher sensitivity to things spiritual. We have a very strong connection to Hashem. What gets in the way of that, I think, is fear and Facebook. Because again, we're with the fake connections, and I communicate a lot through Facebook, so I'm not like I'm talking to myself also, but there's like the good and then there's too much of it. We forgot what it means to really communicate, to really open up, and it's not just to the people around us, it's also to Hashem.